Shut up, loser. Donald Trump spits the words across the grand room, eyes blazing, mocking Jasmine Crockett like the nation is watching a spectacle of shame. Jasmine's gaze sharpens. She knows the stakes. Over 320 million Americans, billions of dollars, in the very truth of justice hang in the balance. Every lie, every manipulation Trump's spun over the last 50 years of power now collides with one woman's relentless fight. The room freezes, cameras flash. Every headline, every poll, every whisper of corruption pulses like a live wire. Trump smirks, daring her to break. But Jasmine Crockett isn't just fighting him. She's fighting the entire system, and the world is about to witness the storm. The moment the gavel struck, the room transformed into a war zone. Every eye in the chamber fixated on the two figures standing like opposing titans at the center. Jasmine Crockett, poised and unwavering, her jaw set with unyielding resolve. Donald Trump, brimming with arrogance, leaned back in his chair, a smirk curling on his lips, as though he already knew the outcome. "You really think your little crusade matters here?" Trump's voice cut through the air like a whip. Jasmine's eyes narrowed, her fingers tightening around the edge of the witness table. "I don't think, Mr. Trump. I know." Gasps rippled across the audience. Flash bulbs from the cameras punctuated the tension, each burst of light revealing the stark contrast between the two. One a calculated strategist who had manipulated power for decades, the other a fearless champion of justice, ready to stand her ground no matter the cost. Trump laughed, low and mocking, shaking his head. "Justice? You're barely out of law school. You have no idea the world you're stepping into." Jasmine leaned forward, her voice calm but icy, each word sharpened by conviction. "I know exactly the world I'm stepping into, and it's one that you've poisoned for far too long." The room seemed to shrink. Every murmured conversation faded into silence, replaced by the electric hum of anticipation. Spectators leaned forward, sensing that this was not just a trial, but a confrontation that could reshape the very definition of power and accountability. Trump's eyes flashed with irritation. "Poisoned? Look at you, trying to play the hero. Do you really believe you can topple a man who's been in the game for over 50 years? Jasmine's heart thumped, but her voice never wavered. "It's not about years in the game. It's about doing what's right, and right now your lies are on trial." A sharp laugh escaped Trump, echoing through the high ceilings. "Right? You think the truth matters? The truth bends to power, little lady, and you're not ready to see it." The verbal daggers they threw at each other cut deeper with every word. Trump's accusations were venomous, crafted to belittle, to humiliate, to destabilize. Jasmine's responses, precise and unwavering, struck back with clarity and moral force. It was a duel of minds, a clash of ideologies, each exchange a spark that set the room ablaze with tension. At one point, Trump slammed his hand on the table, leaning across the space that separated them. "I've survived scandals that would have ended careers. You're about to break under pressure, and the cameras will feast on it." Jasmine's pulse raced, but she straightened her posture, her voice ringing clear. "I don't break. Not for you. Not for anyone. And the world will see that." The journalists scribbled furiously, the air thick with the scent of anticipation. Reporters whispered among themselves, noting the contrast of energies. Trump, the seasoned manipulator who thrived in chaos, and Jasmine, the unwavering warrior whose courage seemed almost impossible to intimidate. And then came the line that set the room on fire. Trump leaned in, eyes glinting with malice. "You really are pathetic. You know that, Crockett?" Something inside Jasmine snapped, a surge of righteous fury that made every nerve stand at attention. Her reply, sharp as lightning, carried across the chamber. "Pathetic? You're the one who's been selling lies as power for decades, and now the world is finally watching you crumble." The gasps were audible. Cameras zoomed in, capturing every twitch of Trump's expression, every flare of Jasmine's defiance. This was no longer a simple legal proceeding. It was a battlefield of words, a storm of confrontation that drew everyone in, forcing them to pick a side without realizing it. Trump leaned back, momentarily caught off guard by her audacity, his smirk faltering for a split second. The audience felt it too, a tremor in the air, as though the weight of justice had momentarily shifted. And yet, the storm was just beginning. Every sentence, every glare, every calculated pause promised that the days ahead would be more explosive, more revealing, and more unforgettable. Jasmine Crockett stood unwavering, the embodiment of resolve and justice, while Donald Trump radiated the raw, unpredictable force of a man accustomed to bending reality to his will. If you think you can resist witnessing what happens next, think again. The clash has only begun, and every word they exchange will make history. And before we dive deeper into this battle, remember, if you want to follow every twist, every shocking revelation, and every moment that exposes the fight for truth, make sure to subscribe to Harrison Stories. You won't want to miss a single heartbeat of what's coming next. The words barely hung in the air before Jasmine Crockett seized the moment. She stepped forward, every movement deliberate, radiating calm yet unstoppable force. The chamber, still trembling from the storm of words moments ago, now seemed to shrink under the weight of anticipation. Cameras swiveled, reporters held their breath, and even the walls seemed to lean in, eager to witness what would happen next. Trump's eyes flickered, a subtle but telling twitch that didn't escape Jasmine's attention. He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms, a smirk playing on his lips. But beneath it, a ripple of unease betrayed him. Jasmine opened a sleek leather folder and laid out her arsenal. Documents, spreadsheets, photographs, meticulously verified and impossible to ignore. This, Jasmine began, her voice slicing through the tension, is the first proof of decades of manipulation, lies, and abuse of power. The American people deserve to see everything. The room reacted immediately. Murmurs rippled across the audience. Cameras clicked frantically, and reporters scribbled furiously. Every sheet revealed a story of embezzlement, shell companies, and deals designed to mislead not just Congress, but the entire nation. Trump laughed, sharp and condescending. Numbers, numbers, numbers. Do you really think people care about your little spreadsheets, Crockett? Jasmine's gaze didn't waver. These aren't little spreadsheets. They're the fingerprints of deception, and they prove what your decades of power have cost this country: truth, trust, and justice. The audience felt the tension spike. It was no longer a debate, it was a battlefield. Trump's words became sharper, faster, venomous in their intent, crafted to humiliate and intimidate. Jasmine's responses were precise, calm, yet blistering, each one landing like a hammer on a taut steel cable. Every exchange heightened the stakes, each sentence a spark threatening to ignite the entire chamber. You think this matters? Trump snapped, slamming his hand on the table, making the glass rattle. I've survived scandals that would have ended careers. You're just a ripple in a storm you don't even understand. Jasmine leaned in, unwavering. Ripples can become tidal waves when the truth can no longer be hidden. And today, that wave begins with you. The verbal volley intensified. Trump shifted tactics, mocking, belittling, and trying to undermine her credibility. But Jasmine's composure radiated like a lighthouse in a storm, her conviction slicing through his chaos. Every journalist, every observer, every soul in that room felt the electric current of this clash. Every second stretched, every glance weighted with significance. Then she produced a photograph, damning, undeniable, and perfectly timed. The room gasped as the image revealed one of Trump's most infamous financial deceptions. The cameras zoomed in, capturing every flicker of Trump's reaction: a tightening jaw, a subtle shift of posture, the slightest falter of confidence. You see this? Jasmine's voice rang out, crisp and unyielding. This is the reality behind the speeches, the rallies, the promises. This is the cost of your power. Trust shattered, integrity sold, the people deceived. Trump opened his mouth, searching for a retort, but the weight of the evidence made even him pause. The air in the chamber thickened, taut as a drawn bowstring. Every word, every gesture, every subtle pause became part of a high-stakes dance, a duel between decades of cunning and the unbreakable force of conscience. Spectators leaned forward instinctively. Even seasoned legal observers found themselves caught in the current, drawn into a narrative more gripping than any headline, more intense than any courtroom drama. The duel had transcended law. It had become a spectacle of truth versus deceit, a battle for the conscience of a nation. And yet, the storm had only just begun. Each revelation, each retort, each subtle glance between Jasmine Crockett and Donald Trump promised that the days ahead would be more explosive, more revealing, and utterly unforgettable. The world was watching. The tension was tangible. And in that room, in that single moment, the first sparks of evidence had ignited a firestorm that no one could ignore. But Jasmine Crockett wasn't done. Not by a long shot. She reached into the depths of her folder, her fingers brushing against something far more dangerous, far more explosive than anything she had revealed so far. Her eyes flicked toward Donald Trump, sharp as a blade, reading the flicker of unease in his expression. "This," she said, holding up a set of documents that glimmered under the bright lights, "is something that has never been seen before." The audience leaned forward instinctively, a collective hush descending over the room. Reporters exchanged incredulous glances, cameras zoomed in, and every hand holding a pen hovered midair, frozen in anticipation. The air seemed to thrum with electricity, each heartbeat magnified 1,000 times. Trump's smirk faltered just for a fraction of a second before he forced a laugh. "Really? Another surprise? Do you really think this will matter?" Jasmine ignored him, spreading the documents across the table with deliberate precision. Graphs, memos, and photographs linked together in an irrefutable chain, each one a strike aimed directly at his legacy. "These are not conjectures. These are facts, Mr. Trump. Facts you've spent decades hiding from the American people." A collective gasp echoed through the chamber. The secret she had unveiled was staggering, a direct connection between Trump's financial dealings and a series of manipulations that had influenced policy, elections, and even the lives of millions. Names, dates, transactions, all exposed in brutal clarity. Trump's hand twitched, betraying a ripple of panic. He opened his mouth, closed it, and then tried again, voice smooth but tense. "You can't. These are just documents. Anyone can fabricate papers, Crockett. Who's going to believe this?" Jasmine's eyes blazed. "Anyone? The people will, and history will." The audience erupted into a mixture of murmurs and whispers. Camera shutters fired like gunshots. Even seasoned journalists, who had seen countless exposés, seemed caught off guard by the sheer magnitude of what was displayed. Some leaned forward as if trying to absorb every detail at once, while others whispered incredulously to their neighbors, unable to process the shock. Trump's tone sharpened, edged with his characteristic cunning. "You're clever, I'll give you that. But cleverness isn't enough to topple a man who has weathered storms far larger than your little crusade." Jasmine leaned closer, her calmness radiating power, her intellect slicing through his defenses. "Cleverness alone? No, Mr. Trump. It's clarity, integrity, and the undeniable weight of truth. And right now, the truth is standing right here in this room, and it's stronger than your decades of lies." For the first time in the room, Trump's usual confidence wavered. His eyes darted across the documents, calculating, scheming, searching for any loophole, any plausible denial. But there was none. Every document had been cross-referenced, every claim verified, and every connection laid bare. The journalists' pens moved frantically, capturing every reaction. The murmurs swelled into audible astonishment. Some gasped, some whispered names that had once seemed untouchable, and a few even audibly muttered, "No way, this can't be real." Trump straightened, trying to regain control, his voice now a mixture of charm and veiled threat. "Ladies and gentlemen, don't be fooled. This is theater. It's a performance designed to deceive." Jasmine's lips curled into a small, unyielding smile. "The only performance here, Mr. Trump, is the one you've been putting on for decades, pretending integrity could coexist with greed. Today, the curtain is pulled back, and everyone can see what's really behind it." The room was electrified. Every glance, every subtle movement, every click of a camera amplified the drama unfolding. The secret she had revealed was more than just a revelation. It was a seismic tremor, shaking the foundation of power Trump had built. Trump's jaw tightened. He tried to deflect, attempting a quip, a joke, a flourish of charm. But Jasmine's intellect was relentless. Every angle he attempted to twist, she anticipated, countered with precision. She was a master of strategy, her mind working faster than the room could keep up with, and it showed in the incredulous awe of the onlookers. Jasmine's calm, controlled fury contrasted sharply with Trump's growing desperation. The contrast was palpable, almost cinematic. The seasoned manipulator meeting a young, brilliant force of unwavering justice. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. The chamber wasn't just a courtroom anymore. It was a stage for an epic confrontation between cunning and truth, between decades of deception and a single woman's relentless pursuit of justice. And as the cameras continued to capture every nuance, every flicker of expression, every small gesture of defiance or hesitation, one undeniable fact crystallized. Jasmine Crockett had just shifted the battlefield. Trump's composure cracked ever so slightly, the first tremor of doubt betraying the calculated persona he had carried for decades. And in that subtle break, the audience sensed a truth that words alone could not convey. The first real indication that the mighty, the untouchable, might finally be vulnerable. The storm had arrived, and the fire Jasmine had sparked was far from extinguished. Each revelation, each calculated move, and each carefully spoken word promised that the days ahead would escalate beyond imagination, leaving no one able to look away and no one able to doubt the power of truth standing face to face with deceit. Donald Trump's eyes narrowed, his usual smirk replaced by a flicker of something sharper. Strategy, cunning, and a subtle desperation. He leaned forward, voice slick with venom, and struck a nerve where evidence alone could not reach. "Let's not pretend, Crockett," he began, his words oozing with condescension. "The public knows very little about you. A young lawyer with big dreams, sure. But what do you really know about the world of power? Your family, your background, your failures. They all paint a different picture, don't they?" Gasps echoed in the chamber. The audience stiffened. Reporters instinctively leaned closer, sensing the escalation. The attack was personal now, deliberate, aimed to destabilize the woman who had shaken the foundations of his empire. Jasmine's fingers curled lightly around the edge of the table, steadying herself. Her gaze was unwavering. The chamber, charged with tension, seemed to shrink around her calm fury. She smiled faintly, sharp and controlled, before responding, voice precise and unflinching. "You think personal attacks can obscure decades of deceit, Mr. Trump? My background, my family, my failures, they are not weapons you can wield against the truth. Integrity is not measured by your fear of it." Trump's smirk faltered, just enough to reveal a hint of uncertainty. He leaned back, his tone shifting to mockery. "Oh, integrity? That's cute. But let's be honest. The American people aren't buying the heroic act. They see ambition, yes, but ambition without experience can be dangerous." Jasmine's eyes narrowed, her calmness a weapon sharper than any document she had revealed. Experience does not justify corruption. Ambition does not excuse exploitation. What matters is courage, the courage to face the truth and to demand accountability, even when it terrifies those who think themselves untouchable. The chamber seemed to vibrate with the intensity of their exchange. Each word, each pause, each glance became a chess move. Trump attempted to twist, to bait her, to sow doubt with insinuations about her motives and her personal life. Yet Jasmine anticipated every angle, countering each subtle jibe with precise logic, moral clarity, and the kind of intellect that left even seasoned observers holding their breath. "You're clever, I'll give you that," Trump hissed, leaning forward, eyes glittering. "But cleverness alone won't protect you from the consequences of challenging someone like me. People don't forgive mistakes. They never have. And if you step out of line, they'll see the cracks in your armor." Jasmine's lips curled into a slight, unyielding smile. "The cracks in my armor? They're nothing compared to the cracks in yours, Mr. Trump. The people see the patterns, the lies, the manipulation. That is the armor that is failing today, And no threat, no insinuation, no deception will stop the truth from breaking through. The duel intensified. Every movement, every subtle gesture, every inflection of voice became part of a relentless battle of wits. Trump's attacks grew sharper, more insidious, drawing on personal insinuations and subtle ridicule, attempting to provoke emotion that could derail her composure. Yet Jasmine's counterattacks were surgical. Calm, unwavering, and devastatingly effective, she dismantled every insinuation, every attempt at mockery, turning each of Trump's weapons into a testament to her own resolve. The audience, reporters, and even Trump's aides felt the shift in the room. A tangible, almost electric tension where intellect and integrity met manipulation and fear. Trump's face reddened with a mixture of frustration and calculation. He leaned forward again, voice low and dangerous. Do you really think words can protect you? Do you think people will ignore your missteps? Everyone has skeletons, Crockett. Everyone has flaws. Yours are just smaller. Jasmine's response was calm, almost serene, but imbued with an intensity that made every observer shiver. Flaws do not justify deception. Skeletons do not absolve lies. And fear will never protect you from accountability. Today, the people are watching. And today, the truth is louder than your threats. The room seemed to hold its breath. Every eye was fixed on the two of them. Every camera focused on the clash that had transcended mere legal argument and had become a psychological battlefield. Trump's strategies were brilliant, sharp, and ruthless, but Jasmine's intellect, foresight, and moral clarity were unbreakable. For a moment, the room experienced silence that spoke louder than any words. Trump's smirk vanished entirely, replaced by a glimmer of calculation and the first signs of doubt. Jasmine Crockett, poised and fearless, had turned every personal attack into a revelation of his own vulnerabilities. And as the tension lingered, the spectators, both live and through their screens, understood something profound. This was no ordinary confrontation. This was a battle where intellect, courage, and morality faced off against manipulation, intimidation, and decades of cunning. And in that moment, Jasmine Crockett had proven that even personal attacks, no matter how vicious, could not shake the resolve of someone fighting for truth. As the session drew to a tense pause, Jasmine looked directly into the cameras, eyes blazing with determination and promise. "We will continue to expose the truth," she said softly, almost a whisper. Yet it reverberated across the room and beyond. And for those who wanted to follow every twist, every revelation, every moment of this relentless fight, don't forget to subscribe to Harrison Stories. Every heartbeat of this story is just beginning, and you won't want to miss what comes next. The chamber had transformed into a living battlefield. Reporters, witnesses, and the public were no longer passive spectators. They were active participants, their every glance, every whisper, every scribbled note adding pressure to the duel between Jasmine Crockett and Donald Trump. Cameras pivoted with relentless precision, capturing every twitch of expression, every subtle gesture, every rising pulse of tension. Trump leaned forward, voice slick with menace. "Look around you, Crockett. All these journalists, these witnesses, they're desperate for drama, but the people know who I am. They know the results I've delivered." Jasmine's gaze swept across the room, calm yet electric. Every raised eyebrow, every faint smirk, every whisper in the gallery was absorbed by her keen awareness. The people see far more than you imagine. Courage, integrity, and truth. They shine even under the scrutiny of 1,000 cameras. Supporters of Jasmine whispered words of encouragement, some leaning forward, others exchanging subtle nods. Their presence added a tangible energy that strengthened her stance. Across the aisle, Trump's loyalists mirrored the strategy, their eyes sharp, waiting for any slip that could be exploited. The chamber was alive with competing currents, a storm of human emotion and influence. Every glance, every word, every subtle nod became a weapon on this invisible battlefield. The air itself seemed taut, charged with unspoken anticipation. The flash of cameras, the scratch of pens, the quiet murmurs of the observers, all amplified the stakes. Trump's tone rose, sharp and commanding, attempting to dominate the narrative. "Don't be fooled! These accusations, these papers, they're all staged. This is theater meant to manipulate perception. The people will see through it. A journalist paused mid-scribble, sensing the subtle shift. Another whispered to a colleague, "He's trying to control the story, but the pressure, it's almost unbearable." The realization spread. Even the media were actors in this high-stakes drama. Every reaction, every micro-expression, every word mattered. Jasmine responded with precision, calm yet piercing. Manipulation cannot obscure the truth. No spectacle can hide accountability. What unfolds here will not be rewritten or forgotten. The chamber stirred. Supporters nodded, murmuring affirmation, while skeptics shifted uneasily, their confidence tempered by Jasmine's unshakable composure. It was no longer a duel of words alone. It had expanded into perception, influence, and raw psychological pressure. Trump tried to reclaim dominance, leaning forward with calculated charm. The people will judge wisely. They'll separate truth from theatrics. They'll remember accomplishments, not whispers. Jasmine's eyes didn't waver. Her voice cut through the tension like a blade. Accomplishments built on deception are meaningless. Whispers are the first signs of revelation. Today, revelation is unstoppable. The chamber held its collective breath. Every movement, Trump's subtle smirk, Jasmine's steady hand, the tilt of a head from a witness, was amplified, part of an intricate psychological duel. Observers sensed the stakes. They were moral, historical, and profoundly human. A witness shifted nervously, caught in the tension, glancing between Jasmine and Trump. A murmur passed through the chamber. "Did you see that? His expression? He's unsettled." Another whispered, pointing at the documents, "Everything is laid bare. There's no hiding anymore." Energy crackled in the room. The flash of cameras, the scribbling pens, and exchanged glances contributed to a mounting psychological pressure. Both combatants were aware. Even the observers were shaping the outcome. Trump's posture tightened. His voice attempted confidence, though tension seeped through. The people will remember history, loyalty, results, not rumors and staged theatrics. Jasmine's calm reply cut through the haze. Results without accountability are hollow. Loyalty without truth is meaningless. The world is watching every move, every misstep, every revelation. The room seemed to pulse with the intensity of a storm ready to break. Every observer, supporter or skeptic, witness or journalist, was caught in the tidal wave of scrutiny. The confrontation had become larger than the two figures alone. It was now a battle of perception, influence, and moral weight. And in that charged silence, with every eye fixed on Jasmine and Trump, it was clear. This was no ordinary trial. This was a war of truth against manipulation, and every person present had become a player in the conflict, shaping the battlefield with each glance, each murmur, each heartbeat. Trump's eyes gleamed with a dangerous glint. He had calculated this moment carefully, and now he unleashed the ultimate strike. A move designed not just to challenge Jasmine, but to obliterate the very evidence that had been her weapon. "You think these documents protect you?" he sneered, voice low, venomous, each syllable calculated to undermine her resolve. "One false link, one misstep, and everything you've built collapses. Your credibility, your career, all of it gone in an instant." The room stiffened. Cameras clicked rapidly, capturing the sudden escalation. Reporters exchanged tense glances, realizing that the battle had reached its apex. Witnesses shifted uneasily, the air thick with suspense, anticipation, and a hint of fear. Even Trump's loyalists sensed the magnitude of the moment. Something unprecedented was unfolding. Jasmine's chest tightened. For the first time, a flicker of doubt threatened to shadow her calm. The weight of the room, the expectation of the nation, and the relentless onslaught of her adversary pressed down on her like a physical force. Her mind raced, parsing through every document, every verification, every corroboration she had painstakingly assembled. One small error could change everything. Trump leaned forward, a predatory grin crossing his face. "Check your facts, Crockett. One false step, and everyone will laugh. Everyone will say the great justice warrior finally fell." Jasmine felt a momentary chill. Her fingers trembled slightly as she adjusted the papers before her, a fleeting human gesture that spoke volumes. But she drew in a deep breath, centering herself, remembering the countless hours, the sleepless nights, the pursuit of truth that had brought her to this moment. Her heart pounded, each beat a drum of both fear and determination. She lifted her head, eyes locking on Trump, and her voice cut through the tension like steel. You can threaten, intimidate, and try to destroy what I hold, but facts do not vanish under fear. Truth is not fragile. It endures, even in the shadow of lies. Trump's grin faltered ever so slightly. He attempted to pivot, his voice sharpening. Endures? Facts are fragile when manipulated, Crockett. One misinterpreted number, one out-of-context photo, one wrong signature. Jasmine interrupted, each word deliberate, precise. One misstep? Every document, every witness, every detail has been verified, cross-checked, and authenticated. I didn't come here alone. I came with truth itself. The room felt electric. Observers leaned forward, some unconsciously holding their breath, as if any exhale might disrupt the tension. Every heartbeat echoed in Jasmine's ears. Every tick of the clock seemed amplified. The battle had transformed from a duel of words into a war of psychological endurance. Trump's eyes narrowed. He had expected hesitation, a crack in her resolve, a fleeting moment of fear he could exploit. But Jasmine's calm defiance, tempered with razor-sharp intellect, resisted. The subtle tremor in her hands vanished, replaced with controlled strength. Her pulse still raced, but her mind was a razor, slicing through every insinuation, every threat, every attempt to destabilize her. You underestimate me, she said, voice steady but imbued with a fire that resonated throughout the chamber. This is more than documents, more than papers. It's integrity, accountability, and the courage to stand when truth demands it. You can try to intimidate me, but the truth is bigger than your threats. Trump's hand tapped the table, his voice low and dangerous. Courage doesn't protect against collapse, Crockett. One misstep and the truth will still stand. Jasmine cut him off sharply, leaning slightly forward, her eyes locked with his. And today it will not be silenced, not by manipulation, not by fear, not by you. For a moment, the entire chamber held its collective breath. Even Trump's calculated composure seemed to waver. The audience sensed the climax of a struggle that had grown far beyond a simple confrontation. It was now a battle of endurance, intellect, and moral fortitude. Every person in that room felt the weight of history pressing down, the tension so thick it was almost tangible. Jasmine's heart thundered, sweat prickled her brow. Every muscle in her body coiled with focus. The pressure was at its peak, the kind that could shatter even the strongest resolve. But she refused to falter. She drew in another deep, steadying breath, and in that moment, clarity struck like lightning. She would not be broken. She would not be intimidated. Every threat, every insinuation, every attempt to destroy her evidence was met with unshakable courage. Her mind raced, anticipating every counter, every angle, every psychological ploy Trump might attempt next. And in that electric silence, with the nation's eyes upon her and the storm of manipulation bearing down, Jasmine Crockett became more than a lawyer. She became the embodiment of relentless truth, standing firm against a tidal wave of deceit, refusing to yield, refusing to break. The tension had reached its zenith. Every whisper, every flash of a camera, every subtle reaction in the room amplified the sense that the moment could shatter or prevail entirely in the next instant. And for those watching, the suspense was unbearable. Would the storm break Jasmine, or would she emerge stronger than ever? Jasmine's hand trembled for just a fraction of a second, the weight of the entire nation pressing down on her shoulders, but her eyes burned with determination. Then, with a deliberate motion, she unveiled a piece of evidence that had been hidden from the world. Documents, recordings, and digital proof so precise, so damning, that the entire chamber seemed to hold its breath. Trump's smirk faltered immediately. The confidence that had fueled his attacks wavered, replaced by a flash of raw fear that no strategy could disguise. His hands gripped the table, knuckles whitening as he realized that the narrative was slipping out of his control. Jasmine's voice rang clear, unwavering and sharp. You thought the truth could be buried, manipulated, or silenced. You thought your deception was untouchable. But here it is. Documented, verified, undeniable. The room erupted into murmurs, whispers spreading like wildfire. Journalists scrambled, cameras pivoted, and the flashes of light captured every reaction. The shock, the disbelief, the tension palpable in the air. Witnesses leaned forward, some with wide eyes, others pressing their lips together in disbelief. Every gaze locked on Jasmine, the pivot point of an unfolding storm. Trump's face tightened, jaw rigid, eyes darting to the new evidence. This can't be real, he muttered, his voice betraying the first crack in his carefully constructed armor. He attempted to mask it with a forced chuckle, leaning back, but the hesitation, the panic beneath the surface, was unmistakable. Jasmine pressed her advantage, each word measured, each sentence a scalpel dissecting decades of deceit. Every transaction, every statement, every concealed fact is here. The people will see what has been hidden, and there is no turning back. The tension escalated, every syllable hit with gravity, and the pace of the room quickened, heartbeats synchronizing with each revelation. Trump tried to respond, to pivot, but the confidence that had carried him this far was collapsing under the weight of undeniable proof. His replies became fragmented, defensive, reactive, a stark contrast to Jasmine's controlled precision. You think you've won? He snapped, voice rising, laced with desperation. This is nothing. I can... Jasmine interrupted, voice cutting through like lightning. This is everything, and today the truth stands where lies once reigned. The chamber felt electric. The audience sensed the shift in momentum, as if the air itself had thickened with anticipation. Every journalist, witness, and observer leaned closer, captivated by the reversal unfolding before their eyes. The power dynamics had shifted so dramatically that even Trump's closest allies felt the tremor, their expressions betraying the gravity of the moment. Trump's hands shook ever so slightly, a subtle but undeniable signal of vulnerability. He tried to mask it, attempting to regain composure, to redirect the focus, to salvage the crumbling narrative. But Jasmine's precision was relentless. Each new piece of evidence was presented with a clarity and confidence that left no room for doubt, no space for deflection. Her voice remained steady, each word imbued with moral authority and unshakable resolve. You tried to control perception, to rewrite history, to manipulate reality. But evidence cannot be erased, truth cannot be silenced, and the people will know what you have done. Trump's breaths grew rapid, his posture tense, eyes darting around as if seeking an escape route. The room, electrified with tension, reflected every micro-expression, the tightening of his jaw, the subtle twitch of an eye, the stiffening of shoulders. The contrast between his unraveling composure and Jasmine's unwavering poise was stark, almost theatrical, yet terrifyingly real. Jasmine leaned slightly forward, locking eyes with Trump, her voice low but cutting, each syllable punctuated with undeniable force. The game is no longer yours to control. Every lie, every manipulation, every attempt to intimidate, it ends here. Today, justice speaks louder than your fear. The chamber erupted into controlled chaos. Flashes from cameras, scribbling pens, whispers spreading in waves, all capturing the seismic shift. Trump's attempt to dominate the narrative had failed, and the realization carved a deep line of panic across his face. Every second crackled with intensity. Jasmine's calm defiance, paired with the weight of her evidence, created a tension so dense it felt like the room itself was holding its breath. Every heartbeat, every murmur, every gasp was a participant in this dramatic pivot. The storm, which had once threatened to engulf her, was now bending in her favor. Trump's voice, strained and fragmented, barely carried over the rising hum of anticipation. This isn't over. Jasmine's eyes glimmered with the fire of conviction. It is, if truth has anything to say about it, and today it speaks. The chamber absorbed the gravity of the moment. The balance had shifted irreversibly. What began as a relentless assault on justice had been met with unparalleled courage, and the pivot was complete. Jasmine Crockett, standing in the eye of the storm, had not just survived. She had flipped the board, exposing the vulnerability of even the most powerful and forcing the world to confront the undeniable reality of truth. And as the room absorbed the magnitude of this twist, the tension was electric, the outcome uncertain, and every spectator aware that history was unfolding in real time, one revelation at a time. Jasmine Crockett and Donald Trump faced each other across the table, eyes locked, voices taut with intensity. No longer was this merely an exchange of accusations and defenses. It had evolved into a duel of intellect, strategy, and psychological mastery. Every word, every fact, every figure was a weapon, wielded with precision, sharpened for maximum impact. Trump leaned forward, voice low and threatening, yet calculated. "You think exposing a few documents is enough, Crockett? Numbers can be manipulated. Data can be twisted. People can be convinced to see what isn't there. The narrative is mine to control." Jasmine's lips curled into a subtle, knowing smile, her voice steady yet cutting. "Control is an illusion, Mr. Trump. Facts, evidence, and logic don't bend to your whims, and today the truth is unyielding." The audience felt the temperature in the room spike. Reporters, witnesses, and officials leaned forward, pens poised, cameras ready, hearts hammering. Every reaction in the chamber amplified the tension, creating a charged atmosphere where even a pause, a breath, or a subtle glance could tip the balance. Trump slammed a hand on the table, trying to assert dominance. "You underestimate the power of perception. One clever twist, one misdirection, and your so-called evidence collapses." Jasmine didn't flinch. Didn't. Instead, she slid a new folder across the table, each movement deliberate, almost theatrical. "Perception is nothing without substance. Here, every claim is documented, cross-referenced, and verifiable. This isn't about clever tricks. It's about facts that withstand scrutiny." Trump's eyes flickered, a shadow of uncertainty crossing his carefully curated composure. He picked up the folder, flipping through pages rapidly, attempting to find a flaw, a gap, a weakness. Each turn of the page, each highlighted figure, each footnote reinforced Jasmine's position. The room seemed to hold its breath, every second stretching taut like a drawn bowstring. "You think these papers intimidate me?" he snapped, voice rising. "I've dealt with far bigger challenges. I've rewritten narratives, controlled markets, swayed millions. This is nothing." Jasmine leaned forward, her gaze unwavering, every word deliberate and lethal in its precision. "You've manipulated, yes, but manipulation cannot erase truth. It cannot erase accountability. Today, the scales tip, and the balance is clear." Trump countered with rapid-fire statements, attempting to drown the facts in a torrent of rhetoric. Each phrase a calculated strike meant to destabilize, to confuse, to fracture Jasmine's narrative. Statistics are misleading. Testimonies are biased. Every allegation has a counter-narrative. But Jasmine was ready. With each rebuttal, she parried the attack, using logic as a shield and evidence as a sword. "Every counter-narrative you offer is addressed here," she said, sliding charts, emails, and recordings across the table in seamless succession. "Every claim is met with verifiable proof. There is no escape from the truth, and the people will see it." The chamber was electric, each exchange a strike in an intellectual duel. Gasps, murmurs, and flashes of cameras punctuated the air. The audience was glued to the scene, sitting on the edge of their seats, unable to look away from the clash of two titans, wielding words, numbers, and strategy with lethal precision. Trump's frustration grew, visible in the tightening of his jaw, the narrowing of his eyes, the subtle tapping of his fingers against the table. "You think logic alone wins battles?" he hissed. "Persuasion, charisma, influence. They outweigh any stack of papers." Jasmine's expression remained calm, a tempest contained behind poised eyes. "Influence without truth is empty. Persuasion without integrity is hollow. Charisma without facts is a veneer that cracks under scrutiny." She leaned back slightly, letting the weight of her words settle, every observer feeling the undeniable force of reason meeting raw power. Trump attempted one last gambit, raising his voice, gesturing wildly, attempting to regain psychological dominance. You've underestimated the reach, the loyalty, the sheer force of... Jasmine cut him off, voice sharp, precise, impossible to ignore. And yet here we are, every misstep, every concealment, every lie laid bare. The force of truth is unmatched. It doesn't bend, it doesn't tire, it doesn't fear. The chamber erupted in a mix of awe, tension, and disbelief. Each heartbeat, each breath, each flicker of expression carried monumental weight. Observers felt the duel as a visceral experience. The battle had become more than confrontation. It was a masterclass in strategy, intellect, and moral fortitude. Trump's deflection faltered. Every maneuver was met with a preemptive counter. Jasmine's clarity, precision, and unshakable composure transformed the entire scene into a living demonstration of intellectual dominance. The audience sensed it. The tides had shifted, the upper hand claimed, and the psychological pressure applied with merciless accuracy. And as the words echoed through the chamber, it became clear. This was the apex of the battle, the moment where intellect, evidence, and resolve collided in a deadly, exhilarating ballet. The spectators felt it in their bones. The thrill, the tension, the unstoppable force of a woman wielding truth like a weapon against deceit. Every glance, every word, every piece of data had become a participant in this ultimate mind game, leaving the audience spellbound, trapped in a spectacle they could neither pause nor look away from. The duel of intellect had reached its peak, and the outcome still hung in the balance, unpredictable, undeniable, and utterly gripping. Then the room fell silent, a hush spreading like a wave. All eyes turned to the entrance as a single figure stepped forward, a witness whose name had been whispered in corridors, whose testimony had long been anticipated but never revealed. The tension spiked. The atmosphere felt almost combustible. Every observer sensed that the chamber itself was holding its collective breath. Jasmine Crockett's gaze sharpened. She nodded slightly toward the witness, a silent signal of trust and strategy. "The floor is yours," she said, voice calm but commanding, every word resonating with authority. The witness swallowed, then began. Each word was deliberate, each sentence a carefully measured strike against the fortress Trump had built around himself. They described transactions, secret communications, and decisions made behind closed doors. Details so precise, so damning, that even the most skeptical in the room leaned forward in disbelief. Trump's face tightened. The smirk that had once signaled control vanished, replaced by a flicker of panic. He tried to interject, voice rising with defensive urgency. This is hearsay, completely unverified." Jasmine, eyes unwavering, countered smoothly. "Verified, documented, and corroborated by multiple sources. Every claim supported by evidence. This is not speculation, it is truth." The room reacted viscerally. Reporters jotted notes frantically, cameras pivoted, and witnesses whispered to each other, murmurs spreading like wildfire. Every syllable from the witness landed with weight, each detail driving the narrative deeper into unassailable territory. Trump shifted uncomfortably, his fingers tapping the table, an involuntary rhythm betraying the pressure. He opened his mouth to respond, but the words faltered under the scrutiny of the room. Every glance from Jasmine, every pointed gesture, every calm nod of acknowledgement toward the witness reminded him and the observers that he was losing control. "You can't possibly," he began, but the witness continued, unfazed, recounting a meeting, an instruction, a chain of evidence that tied directly to actions Trump had previously denied. Jasmine seized the moment, her voice sharp and precise. "You see? Every detail aligns. Every denial contradicts documented reality. The narrative you tried to control is crumbling before our very eyes." The tension was palpable. Trump's usual cadence of interruptions, deflections, and rhetorical flourishes faltered. His once commanding posture slumped slightly, a subtle but telling signal of vulnerability. Every gesture, every blink, every micro-expression was magnified in the lens of cameras and the scrutiny of witnesses. Jasmine pressed forward, each word a scalpel dissecting his defenses. "The evidence doesn't lie. It doesn't fear scrutiny, and it doesn't bend to intimidation. Trump's voice rose, a mix of frustration and panic. This is manipulation. You're spinning narratives. You think the people will believe the truth? Jasmine interjected, eyes locked on his, voice cutting through like steel. The people always see the difference between a fear and integrity, deception and courage. Today, that difference is undeniable. The witness's testimony continued, each revelation layered with corroborating documents, emails, and recordings. The room leaned forward collectively, every spectator trapped on the edge of anticipation, unable to look away. Gasps punctuated key points. Murmurs of astonishment spread like wildfire. The scales had tilted decisively, and the psychological pressure on Trump became almost unbearable. Trump attempted a desperate maneuver, gesturing wildly, trying to reclaim control, but his words were now fragmented, lacking the logic and precision that had previously shielded him. The once unshakable confidence cracked, revealing the human vulnerability beneath the veneer of dominance. Jasmine's calm, commanding presence became even more pronounced in contrast. Every movement, every word, every glance reinforced her supremacy in this duel. The audience could almost feel the tension pressing down on Trump, sensing that every attempt to recover was being met with unerring logic and undeniable fact. The room seemed to vibrate with suspense. It was impossible to predict the next move, yet the trajectory was clear. Jasmine had seized total control. Trump's responses became increasingly reactive, his attacks losing coherence, while the weight of the witness's testimony made every deflection more futile. Observers felt as if they were witnessing a pivot point in history itself, the moment when the tide irrevocably turned. Every heartbeat, every whisper, every shutter click captured the intensity of a battle that was no longer theoretical but viscerally real, unfolding in real time. Jasmine's gaze never wavered from Trump. She let the silence hang, letting the gravity of the evidence and testimony settle like a verdict in the minds of all present. The balance had shifted. The storm had found its eye, and it was hers to command. And in that moment, with every eye locked on the chamber, every mind racing with the implications, one undeniable truth became clear. Jasmine Crockett had turned the tide completely. Trump was on the defensive, his every move scrutinized, his every word challenged. And the room, charged with tension, history, and raw emotion, stood on the edge of revelation, waiting for the next inevitable strike. Then it happened. Jasmine Crockett rose, standing taller than ever, her eyes locked on Trump with a fire that could ignite the entire chamber. "You're finished, Trump," she said, voice sharp, unwavering, laced with the kind of righteous anger that demanded attention. "Every lie, every deceit, every manipulation, it ends here." Trump's lips curled into a sneer, but the confidence had a jagged edge now, a tremor of panic beneath the mask. "Finished? You delusional little—" "Shut up, liar!" Jasmine cut him off, her words striking like a whip, sharp and merciless. The room flinched at the intensity, the energy crackling with raw confrontation. Every journalist, every witness, every observer leaned forward, unable to look away from the collision of two forces, one powered by justice, the other by cunning and fear. "You think shouting and waving papers makes truth yours?" Trump shot back, venom dripping from every syllable. "You're pathetic, Crockett. A weak, desperate—" "You're disgusting, Trump," Jasmine fired, each word deliberate, punctuated with undeniable force. "Your greed, your lies, your manipulations, you've poisoned everything you touch. But today, the people see you for what you are." The air vibrated with tension, charged with every word, every pause, every insult hurled like a weapon. The chamber felt alive, almost sentient, reacting to the clash, amplifying each syllable, each gesture, each micro-expression. Trump leaned forward, fists clenched, eyes burning with desperation. "You're nothing but a naive fool. Do you really think a stack of papers can defeat me? I control narratives. I control influence. I control the truth," Jasmine shot back, voice echoing across the chamber. "And no amount of manipulation, no amount of fear, no amount of money will ever change it." The crowd seemed to hold its collective breath. Each word was a punch, each glance a duel. each movement a statement of intent. The contrast between them could not have been starker. Jasmine, calm, precise, and burning with righteous fury. Trump, frantic, calculating, yet cracking under the weight of his unraveling deception. "You have no idea what you're up against," Trump shouted, leaning across the table, veins bulging, words sharp and laced with intimidation. "I know exactly what I'm up against," Jasmine replied, eyes unflinching. "A man afraid of the truth, hiding behind lies, incapable of facing justice. And that is why you lose." Trump's hands slammed the table, rattling pens and papers. "You think your morality makes you strong? You're weak, weak and blind." Jasmine stepped closer, voice low but cutting, every word a hammer striking steel. "Morality is my strength, integrity is my shield. And courage, courage is the weapon that you will never understand. You can scream, threaten, and lash out, but none of it can touch what is real." The room seemed to pulse with energy. Every flash of a camera, every whisper from a witness, every subtle shift in posture amplified the tension. Trump tried to retort, but his sentences fragmented under the pressure. Each attempt met with Jasmine's sharp, unrelenting counters. "You're a fraud," she said, her voice rising, commanding the chamber. "A manipulator, a cheat. You hide behind bravado because you fear exposure. And today that fear is yours to carry." Trump's face flushed, sweat beading along his hairline. How dare you? This is justice," Jasmine interjected, her words slicing through the chaos, leaving silence in their wake. "And you can't intimidate it, cheat it, or evade it. Every move you've made, every lie you've told, every shred of manipulation, it is here and it is ending." The clash continued, rapid, relentless, each verbal strike charged with moral weight and cunning. Jasmine's composure was unbreakable, her intellect razor-sharp, her courage palpable, while Trump's machinations faltered under the relentless pressure of truth. Each insult, each counter, each fact laid bare the growing chasm between deception and integrity. The chamber was electrified, every spectator on edge. Every heartbeat seemed magnified, every gasp amplified. The duel had become more than words. It was a moral confrontation, a clash of ideologies, a fight between a force that could bend reality and one that could hold the truth to the light. "You're finished, Trump," Jasmine said finally, voice steady, piercing, and undeniable. "And the world is watching." Trump's eyes darted, searching for a path, an escape, a lifeline. But there was none. Every card had been played, every deception exposed. The contrast was undeniable. Justice had the upper hand, integrity the momentum, and courage the final say. The chamber held its breath, every observer knowing they had witnessed the apex of confrontation, the moment where cunning met courage, deception met truth, and a single force of justice dominated the stage completely. Jasmine stood tall, eyes blazing, every word, every gesture, every breath, a testament to the power of truth confronting treachery. Trump, caught in the relentless weight of exposure, could only sputter, lunge and falter, the unraveling visible to all. And in that climactic exchange with words like swords, data like armor, and courage like a shield, the story reached its most intense peak, a battle of wills, intellect, and moral force that no one would ever forget. The chamber seemed to vibrate with the aftershocks of revelation. Every eye in the room had witnessed the unraveling of a carefully constructed facade. Trump's defenses had collapsed, and the evidence that Jasmine had methodically revealed was now undeniable, leaving the former president exposed on every front. Journalists whispered furiously, cameras flashed ceaselessly, and the weight of collective scrutiny pressed down like an invisible hand on every inch of the room. Trump's face contorted with disbelief, his bravado evaporating into panic. Every maneuver he had relied upon, every diversion, every obfuscation, every insinuation, had been meticulously dismantled before him. This is a witch hunt. This is... But Jasmine's gaze was unyielding, her voice calm yet electric. "This is accountability. You built a world on lies, manipulation, and deceit. Today the people see it, and history records it. Your illusions are gone. The media erupted. Headlines flashed before the room's monitors. Social media erupted into a frenzy, and the public's response began to cascade in waves. Supporters of truth applauded Jasmine's tenacity, while skeptics were forced to confront the undeniable weight of evidence. The impact was seismic, political, moral, and cultural tremors radiating outward, touching millions who were watching from across the nation. Trump, grasping for control, attempted one last rhetorical lunge. "You think this changes anything? The narrative, I control perception. I can..." "You can't control reality," Jasmine interjected sharply, voice ringing through the chamber, slicing through desperation. "Facts are not negotiable. Evidence is not optional. Truth is unstoppable." For a heartbeat, it seemed as if the storm had fully passed. Jasmine standing undefeated at the center, her calm authority illuminating the room. Yet then, an unexpected twist, subtle yet shocking, emerged. A previously undisclosed document, buried deep in the archives, hinted at a connection that could complicate the narrative. A minor political ally who had indirectly been involved in certain decisions attributed to Trump. The revelation, though not diminishing Jasmine's advantage, introduced a moment of suspense. A reminder that even the most meticulous victories contain unpredictable variables. The room gasped. Eyes darted between Jasmine, Trump, and the new evidence. Whispers spread like wildfire. For a split second, uncertainty threatened to creep into the narrative. But Jasmine, quick and composed, seized the moment. "This doesn't weaken the truth. It underscores it," she said, voice steady, precise, and commanding. "Every action, every deception, every manipulation is laid bare. The context changes nothing. Accountability remains, and justice is uncompromised." Trump's reaction was immediate and raw. His eyes widened, a flash of panic crossing his features as he tried to recalibrate, to redirect the focus, to salvage any remnants of control. His words were fragmented, defensive, and increasingly erratic. You can't, this is, I..." Jasmine's response was merciless, yet measured. "I can, because the truth doesn't need exaggeration or intimidation. It only needs courage, clarity, and the willingness to confront what others hide. That is why you are exposed, and why your manipulations will not stand." The tension was electric. Every camera shutter, every pen scribbling notes, every whisper from witnesses amplified the charged atmosphere. The audience, both in the room and across the nation, felt the pull of suspense. Every second loaded with the weight of history, morality, and revelation. Trump attempted another desperate deflection, a sharp gesture, a pointed accusation, but Jasmine anticipated it. Each move he made to create chaos was countered with precision. Each question met with evidence. Each attack met with clarity. The room seemed to vibrate with the rhythm of the intellectual and moral duel, the cadence of truth pressing relentlessly against the walls of deceit. As the moments stretched, the significance of the twist became clear. Jasmine's strategy had not only exposed Trump, but had also demonstrated that even the most intricate networks of power could be dismantled by courage, intellect, and unrelenting determination. The minor twist added suspense, but it did not shake the momentum. If anything, it elevated Jasmine's mastery, proving she could adapt in real time, pivot with precision, and maintain control under pressure. By the end of the session, the atmosphere had shifted irrevocably. Trump's attempts at counteroffensive were visibly weakened, his statements now defensive, reactive, lacking cohesion. Jasmine stood at the center of the room, calm, commanding, a figure of moral and intellectual authority. The audience sensed it. The battle was nearly won, the storm weathered, yet the thrill of unpredictability remained, a testament to the complexity of justice and the drama of truth confronting power. And as the chamber slowly settled, whispers turned to murmurs of admiration, disbelief, and awe. The twist had shaken expectations, but Jasmine's unwavering poise ensured the upper hand remained hers. History, witnesses, and the public had seen the moment when deception faltered under scrutiny, when courage met cunning, and when justice, though never simple or linear, asserted itself with undeniable force. As the gavel echoed through the chamber, signaling the end of the harrowing session, A silence fell that was heavier than any roar. The room, once alive with tension, had transformed into a space of reflection, the weight of the revelations pressing on everyone present. Reporters lowered their cameras, scribes paused mid-note, and even the witnesses seemed to inhale collectively, absorbing the gravity of what had just transpired. Jasmine Crockett remained standing, composed yet radiant with quiet strength. Every eye in the room acknowledged her victory, not just in the facts she had presented, but in the moral authority she had wielded. She had navigated a labyrinth of lies, manipulation, and intimidation, emerging unscathed, her integrity intact, and her spirit undimmed. Today, justice had been defended, and the truth had stood its ground against the onslaught of power. Trump, in stark contrast, slouched into his seat, a man exposed and vulnerable. The carefully constructed veneer of dominance had been stripped away, leaving only the raw figure of a leader caught in his own web of deception. The room felt the shift, the air thick with a mixture of disbelief, shock, and vindication. He opened his mouth to speak, to defend, to redirect, but no words could bridge the chasm that now separated him from authority and credibility. Outside the chamber, the repercussions rippled through society. News networks dissected every statement, every document, every subtle exchange. Social media buzzed with debates, speculation, and analysis, dividing opinion but undeniably highlighting the consequences of truth confronting manipulation. Headlines blazed, "Justice prevails. Courage meets corruption. Jasmine Crockett stands unshaken." The public, long spectators of power plays and hidden dealings, witnessed accountability enacted with precision. Yet the story did not end neatly. A subtle, almost imperceptible twist lingered in the air, an unfinished thread in the tapestry of events. Though Jasmine had achieved a moral and intellectual victory, the documents hinted at deeper, more complex networks, allies and adversaries still hidden in the shadows. The chamber may have witnessed one battle, but the war of influence, ambition, and justice was far from over. Jasmine's victory was profound, but it was tempered by the knowledge that power rarely sleeps and corruption rarely rests. She walked from the chamber not with arrogance, but with solemn awareness. The world was watching, and the stakes were eternal. Each step echoed a message. Integrity matters, courage counts, and even the mightiest can falter when faced with relentless truth. Trump's retreat was subtle, a physical withdrawal mirrored by the waning force of his rhetoric. But in every glance, every twitch, every fleeting smirk, there remained a trace of unfinished business, a reminder that the narrative of power and deceit is never entirely resolved. The audience sensed it. The chamber sensed it. Even history, as it silently chronicled, seemed aware of the lingering tension, the shadow of consequence that had not yet dissipated. Observers departed the chamber with minds racing. Conversations erupted in hallways and living rooms alike. Debates flared over the implications of the evidence, the courage it took to confront power, and the nature of justice itself. Jasmine's triumph was celebrated, yes, but it carried with it the weight of awareness. The balance between power and integrity is delicate, and vigilance is perpetual. The light of victory illuminated Jasmine, but shadows danced in the corners, symbols of the work that remained, the battles yet to come, and the unpredictable turns that history often takes. The public was left in awe of her resilience, inspired by her courage and simultaneously reminded that the fight for justice is never final, never easy, and never free from complexity. As the chamber emptied, the gavel's echo faded, yet the resonance of the day lingered, embedding itself in memory. Justice had won, deception had faltered, and truth had claimed its undeniable place. But the story, like all great struggles, remained alive in whispers, implications, and the ever-present possibility of future twists. Jasmine Crockett stepped into the sunlight, her posture unwavering, her mind alert. She had defended justice, exposed corruption, and reminded the world that courage, intellect, and moral fortitude are forces capable of toppling even the most formidable obstacles. Yet she also knew that her victory was a chapter, not the conclusion. The echoes of power, the shadows of deceit, and the whispers of ambition would continue to challenge her vigilance. And as the crowd dispersed, the nation watched, rapt and reflective. History had been made, but the story's resonance promised that its ripples would be felt for years to come. The battle had ended, yes, but the lessons endured, the questions persisted, and the tension of what lay ahead lingered, a haunting reminder that justice is both a triumph and a responsibility. Never fully complete, always demanding courage. In the end, this story reminds us that justice is not a prize handed freely. It is a path carved through doubt, sacrifice, and unshakable resolve. Jasmine's stand against deception proves that truth, though fragile, can outlast the loudest lies when defended with courage and integrity. And for us, the lesson is clear. Each voice, each choice, and each act of honesty matters. When faced with shadows, we are called not to retreat, but to shine brighter, to hold fast to what is right, and to become the guardians of truth in our own lives. If this class shook you, don't look away. Sit with it. Share it. Let it echo. Pass it on to someone who still believes courage can silence corruption. Subscribe to Harrison Stories, where every battle for justice finds a voice. Hit the bell, because the next chapter won't be calm. It'll be louder, sharper, and it might just redefine how you see truth and power. This is a fictional dramatization inspired by real struggles and real bravery. Any resemblance to actual people or events is coincidental or symbolic, meant for reflection and critique. Thank you for watching. Justice isn't granted, it's fought for. This is Harrison Stories.